Western context, Western contributors, Western cases, and Western interpretation. When we try to understand security, starting from its history, its theories, its cases, even its criticism, mostly the ideas, the context, the content, the contributors, mostly they are West-centric. And that's why the author is criticizing the significance of this discipline as a comprehensive discipline. Do we understand why we are questioning security studies? Okay, so to understand the Eurocentrism of security studies as an academic discipline, security studies is dominated by Western theories. The author is claiming that traditional approaches such as neorealism assumes its applicability to the entire international system. Kenneth Waltz claims that all states should adapt to the logic of anarchy. আমরা পড়েছি না, we have studied about anarchy, we have studied about the 6 principles of political realism, where it is instructed that regardless of their location, time, resources, or culture, states are functionally undifferentiated. Now tell me, what does it mean, functionally undifferentiated? Where it's written in neorealist doctrine that states are functionally undifferentiated, and what does it mean? Can Tamim tell us 115?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you tell us what is functionally undifferentiated
Ma'am,
context?
I've just joined the class right 2 minutes ago because my electricity was out of. Like,
Electricity chilo na.
yes, ma'am. I've just like joined the class.
Okay. Are you awake or you are sleeping, Tamim?
No, ma'am, I am awake. I'm at my table.
Okay. All right. ঠিক আছে. But you can tell us about neorealism. We are actually criticizing neorealism, that how neorealism treats the international system and international states in a similar way. Can you tell us a bit about neorealism? I think that you know.
Yes, ma'am. Neorealism is like a socialist theory that states that like the anarchic structure of the global system. Realism tells us about the human nature, but
Mm.
neorealism actually states about the like global system or global structure of anarchic uh,
Yes.
system.
Okay, thank you, Tamim. You are right. So, as Tamim has rightly said, that neorealism actually assumes the international system and the units, that means states, as a form of fixed features and fixed categories. That's why it is known as one of the structuralist theories of international relations. So it has tried to universalize the context of international system, the context of anarchy, the behavior of states, and that's why states are being entitled as functionally undifferentiated. That what does it mean? That means functionally similar. So when neorealism is trying to assume the system and the entities as similar units, how it is depriving the non-Western units. So despite neorealism's claims of universality, আমরা পড়েছি না, the six principles of political realism, which claims to be universal. In reality, the approach has suffocated security studies within a Eurocentric bias, making it inapplicable outside the West. So, neorealism claims to be a universal theory, but according to the author, it is in contrast. What it is doing? It is making it inapplicable outside of the West. So, কেন outside of the West neorealism ke the author has claimed to be inapplicable? Let's try to understand. So, neorealism constructs international politics solely constituted by the interaction of the great powers, essentially omitting the non-Western ones. Evidently, neorealism admits to the omission of Eastern agency to incorporate weaker or non-Western states into a theory about international security. Now let's try to understand. The author is claiming that neorealism is essentially omitting the non-Western units. At the same time, the author is claiming that neorealism admits to the omission of Eastern agency, Eastern or non-Western agency. So the author is claiming that neorealism is omitting non-Western units and also it's omitting non-Western agency. And they claim non-Western agencies, non-Western states as weaker states into a theory about international security. What do you think? Why the author is claiming in a manner? Does neorealism actually exclude the experience and the agency of non-Western states? What do you think?
Ma'am,
Neorealism, yes,
ma'am,
bolo.
I think the author's claim is right because neorealism actually explores that the interaction between the major powers or the states, like all the states are need to be function in a particular way, but the smaller states or the states outside the Western world, they don't function as the Western states as well. So, ma'am, I think when the author is saying that when all the states are need to function in a particular way, they actually exclude the economic condition or the historical struggle or something like the political condition of that smaller states. So, I think the author's claim is right in this case.
Okay, so rightly pointed out, Oishi. So, as despite neorealism's claim that it's universal, see the third point, despite world's omission of Eastern agency, neorealism claims to be universal in terms of its objectivity. It tries to prescribe a global or comprehensive theory that within anarchy, the units will behave in XYZ manner. But the entire experience, the entire conceptual frameworks, the context of balance of power, the context of balance of threat, the context of security dilemma, all these converge around the experiences of the mainstream Western or big powers. So when it's about the experience of non-Western states, when it's about the experience, the context of Eastern agency, then mostly it is explained in relation to the context of the bigger powers or superpowers. Think about Cuban Missile Crisis. We always, how do we study Cuban Missile Crisis? What have we studied about Cuban Missile Crisis? Can anyone remind me? What have you learned of Cuban Missile Crisis? Why Cuban Missile Crisis is important as a historical event? বলো।
Because it almost escalated into a nuclear war.
Nuclear war between whom?
Ma'am, USSR and USA.
Okay, so and it happened when? Cuban Missile Crisis?
During JFK's time, 1963.
9. Yes,
19?
ma'am.
It is part of which war?
Cold War.
Cold War.
Cold War. Okay, all the answers are meticulously right. We have always studied Cuban Missile Crisis as part of Cold War as and classical examples of the proximities of engaging into a nuclear warfare, how we had the crisis was escalated, how it was de-escalated, and so on, and how it created interactive context between the former superpowers. Now, you see, when from the context of security, from the context of global security studies, could Cuban Missile Crisis be studied as a security threat for Cuba itself? Have we studied from that perspective that how Cuban Missile Crisis developed a security threat for Cuba? What was the domestic and external context of Cuba? Have we studied that context while learning Cuban Missile Crisis? Cuban Missile Crisis ke as a separate Cuban affairs হিসেবে have we studied in terms of its domestic and external significance and determinants? No. Think of,
Ma'am,
yes. Think of the proxy wars, the so-called proxy wars that we study and that we tend to learn while studying Cold War. We always try to assume the inception, the escalation, the de-escalation in relation to the context of those two superpowers. That's why the author is claiming that evidently neorealism admits to the omission of Eastern agency to incorporate weaker or non-Western states, quote unquote weaker, as these theories assume, or non-Western state into a theory about international security. So the context and the agencies of non-Western units are being analyzed in a way that it is always analyzed in relation to the bigger powers according to neorealist context. And that's why the author is criticizing the claims of neorealism to be universal. So it is more like trying to fit in everything within the comprehensive prescription of neorealism. So Pinar Bilkin argues that another critics of global security studies is arguing that the historical absence of non-Western insecurities from security studies has significantly shaped both the practices and theories of security in non-Western context. So Bilkin emphasizes the need to critically engage with the silence and lack of consciousness regarding non-Western perspectives on security. So the historical absence, starting from the development of the historical ideas, from the development of security studies in the wake of Second World War, this is illustrated by the lack of attention to issues such as post-colonial statehood, which are critical for understanding security in many regions. For example, the example that I provided about Cuba during Cuban Missile Crisis. Also think of the non-Western context and non-Western regions during the context of First World War, during the context of Second World War. We rarely analyze and we rarely emphasize on the security of this non-Western region during First World War or Second World War. Whereas these regions have their subjective security context, but we rarely study those when we are going through the theory and the practice of security studies. And post-colonial experiences of non-Western states. So Western security concerns, Western security conceptualization, Western security theoretical framework are not at all aware or not at all agreeing to include these absences. এজন্যই author is claiming historical absences and which is deliberately not included within the context of security studies. So critics of standard concepts, যেটা বললাম, the imposition of Western notions of statehood and security can lead to a distorted understanding of security dynamics in the global south. আমরা খুব স্বাভাবিকভাবে when we are becoming concerned about security, when we are developing context, concepts, theories, and frameworks to understand security, and we are not being able to incorporate everyone's insecurity, what will it lead to us? It will definitely lead to a distorted understanding of security dynamics. সেটাই বলা হচ্ছে. So we have learned in security studies about nuclear deterrence, balance of power, MAD, Star Wars. We have discussed about, just hold on for 1 minute. Yes. So we have studied about all the core concepts of securities as it was instructed to accommodate. But these core concepts are not being able to accommodate issues of state building, issues of imperial aggression, issues of poverty, issues of health security, issues of food security, issues of water scarcity, issues of famine. So just knowing about mutually assured destruction, just knowing about Star Wars, just knowing about nuclear deterrence is not addressing my own context of insecurity that might be arising from just a coastal natural disaster. So security and its entire dynamics is not being able to address all the concepts in a comprehensive manner. That's why the Eurocentrism of security studies is being highlighted by this set of authors, where non-Western insecurities, the Cuban Missile Crisis, as I said, was very much a Cuban affair. So the crisis was not solely a superpower affair, but also a response to Cuba's need for sovereignty and defense, and also a security threat. So Islamic critics argue that the Western modernity is criticized by materialism and a disconnection from spiritual values, and West emphasized on individualism and capitalism. All right. So similar to that, spiritual critics like Islamic critics against modernism, against its values, uh, gender and security, where the discipline has historically overlooked the specific insecurities faced by different genders, especially passive genders in non-Western contexts, which further illustrates the limitations of a West-centric approach. Geopolitical narratives, where non-Western states are often portrayed either as junior partners in power dynamics or as troublemakers, which simplifies complex security issues and reinforce a West-centric narrative. কেন বলছে যে একটা জিওপলিটিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভ, আইডিওলজিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভ, gender-based narrative can reinforce the attention on West-centric narratives? So the moment we are not being able to include the experience of all, and the moment we are trying to interpret the insecurities for others in our own language, it's more like I am speaking on behalf of you. I am identifying your insecurities. I am being the global guardian. I have taken the responsibilities to address, to highlight, and to demand for your insecurities. To respond to this taking over approach of West, Gayatri Spivak has developed an interesting articulation named Can the Subaltern Speak? Has anyone gone through this literature? Can the Subaltern Speak? Have we heard of this term or this notion? Can the subaltern speak?
Yes,
What does it say? Any idea?
it subaltern means like the majority who are not in mainstream, right? So uh it coming in terms of হাসিনার আমলে যেই পরিমাণ মানুষগুলা ডিসএনফ্রাঞ্চাইজ ছিল, তারা কথা মানে তারা এখন কথা বলতেছে ওই ইয়া থেকে মানে শুনেছিলাম এই টার্মটা।
কিন্তু এটার সাথে subaltern, how you are connecting subaltern to that? Could all
ম্যাম
the mainstream speak?
ম্যাম মানে ইউজুয়ালি সাবঅল্টার্নের মানে ইয়াটা হচ্ছে যে লোয়ার স্ট্যাটাস অথবা
না,
পলিটিক্যালি
তোমার সাবঅল্টার্নের কনসেপ্ট ঠিক আছে, কিন্তু তুমি যে কনটেক্সটে যে ক্যান দ্য সাবঅল্টার্ন স্পিক এর এক্সাম্পল দিলে, সেটা আমি জিজ্ঞাসা করলাম যে সেটা কি শুধুমাত্র সাবঅল্টার্নদের জন্য একটা কনটেক্সট, নাকি মেইন স্ট্রিমরাও সেখানে সাপ্রেস ছিল?
ma'am, mainstream they have the illusion of freedom, or they had the illusion যে আচ্ছা মানে some intellectuals are speaking as if they are like মানে representing the whole intellectual বা whole urban middle class society. So ওইখানে কোনো problem ছিল না. The problem was like people who came from madrasa background or who came from let's say like out of Dhaka, they were not able to speak. সো ওইভাবে ছিল যে ক্যান সাবঅল্টার্ন স্পিক, এন্ড রাইট নাও ইট ইজ লাইক দ্য সাবঅল্টার্ন আর স্পিকিং।
Okay. Do we all agree with that? বলো। Any other interpretation of can the subaltern speak? If subalterns are marginalized people, then can they speak for themselves, for their insecurities? Think of the world around us. All the people who are insecure, can they speak for themselves? Can they identify their insecurities? What is the problem if someone else on behalf of me is identifying my insecurities? What is the problem with that? Is there any problem?
ম্যাম অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমার ইনসিকিউরিটিস গুলো যদি আমি প্রপারলি অ্যাড্রেস করতে চাই, এটা আমি ঠিক মতো করতে পারবো। এখন অন্য কেউ যদি আমার ইনসিকিউরিটিস অ্যাড্রেস করতে আসে, সে অনেক কিছু মিস করে যাবে যেগুলো অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাকে হয়তো বদার করছে or something, ম্যাম। So this is the problem, I think.
Yes. So addressing subjective insecurities and subjective experience while conceptualizing theoretical and practical security is really important. That to what extent I have the freedom to address my insecurities, to identify my insecurities. That's why it is being said that West Eurocentric or West-centric security studies is actually trying to prescribe global insecurities, trying to prescribe global insecurities in their terms. In relation to Western context, they are trying to explain events like the historical events and the events of insecurities. They are not trying to incorporate the critics from those subaltern groups. They are not being able to narrate the insecurities of others properly, and they shouldn't have the rights to be the in charge of others' insecurities. So people should have their subjective freedom to identify and to narrate their insecurities. Knowledge should have that freedom to incorporate their own pedagogical articulation. So the discipline of security studies in terms of knowledge, in terms of theories, in terms of practice, were becoming westernized. So knowledge production as well, non-Western actors are compelled to express their insecurities using the vocabs and frameworks established by Western scholars, which can distort their realities and experiences. So starting from knowledge to theories to practice, security studies was all encompassed or converged around the Western realities and context. So সেটাই বলা হচ্ছে, যার কারণে যে সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজকে ইউরোসেন্ট্রিক বা ইউরোসেন্ট্রিজম অফ সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজকে ক্রিটিসাইজ করা হচ্ছে। ওয়ার্ল্ডস omission of Western imperial hierarchies enables him to portray the image of the imperial West as one of the cases of peace and harmony. আমরা যখন সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজের when we have discussed or will discuss about the historical development, the historical the lacuna in security studies, the escalation of the theories, the development of the theories, we always try to, the Western or mainstream security studies have always tried to narrate the Cold War context as a success to limit the escalation of wars. So, as well as they have always tried to prescribe, যেটা বলা হয়েছে, imperial hierarchies were portrayed as the image of the imperial West as one of that consisted of peace and harmony. So, যখন the historical events are intentionally being narrated in a certain manner. The Cold War was intentionally being fabricated as a phase of stability. In addition to this, it is argued that neorealism omits or ignores Western imperialism through the depiction of Cold War bipolarity as peaceful. যে কোল্ড ওয়ার কে পিসফুল হিসেবে we are trying to prescribe, আমরা imperial hierarchy কে we are trying to prescribe as a state of peace and harmony. So Wald's theory of international politics therefore fails to incorporate the East as a category of analysis, because when we will try to understand the Eastern experience of Cold War, it's not always peaceful. The absence or the success of not engaging in a nuclear war was not a substantial development for the non-Western world. The context on the experience of imperialism was substantially different for non-Western security context. So neorealism কিন্তু এই কনটেক্সট গুলোকে হাইলাইট করে না। নিওরিয়ালিজম ইজ নট ইনকর্পোরেটিং or highlighting those experiences. So neorealism's focus on great powers, the omission of Eastern agencies and experiences, and its subsequent dominance dramatically hinder the ability of the discipline to accurately theorize about global security studies. So when we are claiming security studies is global, when we are claiming neorealism is universal, but we are not being able to accommodate the experiences and the context of all. That's why it is being claimed as uneven or Eurocentric. Okay, so why security studies is being claimed as Eurocentric? আমরা তো বুঝতে পেরেছি, তাই না?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now think about the approaches to overcome this uneven theoretical and conceptual development of security studies. The author has initially identified the Eurocentrism in security studies that I have discussed so far. In parallel, the author has also identified and analyzed the alternative approaches, the approaches which are claimed to be inclusive in security studies, contemporary approaches. যেহেতু একটা there is an existing lacuna, existing not lacuna, we can say that gap, existing lacuna or gap in security studies while claiming itself as an comprehensive one. So definitely there will be approaches to bridge the gap. There will be alternative development to bridge the gap. So the author has not only identified the gap, but also analyzed the bridging approaches, that how far these approaches had become successful in contemporary era to address those limitations or to address those gaps. So security studies has recently taken significant steps to oppose the limitations of traditional approaches. Say traditional approaches যে গ্যাপটা আছে, যে uneven context আছে, that it is not being able to incorporate the experience of all. To counter that, what are the alternative approaches? One alternative is constructivism. While studying theories, we have also studied that. So scholars like Amitav Acharya and Barry Buzan claim that constructivism's emphasis on ideational forces compared to the materialistic powerlessness of the developing countries produces a greater chance to challenge Western dominance. We already understand constructivism, so I'm not explaining it. So, however, it may look like constructivism's dismissal of objectivism has paved the way for global security studies. We know that constructivism denies objectivity or structural approaches like realism and liberalism. Constructivism focuses on what? On ideas, on knowledge, on subjective experience, right? So in abstract format, it may look like that constructivism's dismissal or denial of objectivism has paved or has widened the way for global security studies. The approach is still premised on a Western-centric narrative. So the author is also criticizing constructivism, that in theoretical narrative, constructivism might be claiming that it is challenging objectivity, but still it is reinforcing the West centrism of security studies. কেন এটা claim করছে? Let's try to understand. So constructivist scholarship primarily focuses on security processes and outcomes taking place in the North Atlantic region and Europe. So when we are thinking about the theoretical or the conceptual orientation of constructivism, then still it is regionally being West-centric, according to the author's analysis. And around 45% of samples that constructivist research converge around is still related to the North Atlantic region or North Atlantic context of insecurity, with only a very negligible percentage, that is 13.1% in Asian context, and a more negligible amount in regions such as Latin America, Africa, and Middle East. So, খুব abstract context যদি regional যে significance বা regional যে priority list যদি আমরা করি in terms of theoretical discussion, সেখানেও দেখা যাচ্ছে যে constructivist যে explanation বা constructivist যে narrative development, that is regionally still being West-centric. Not only that, even a deviation from traditional approaches cannot globalize the discipline. প্রথমত যে যদিও constructivism is claiming to challenge the subjectivity, but when it's about subjective experience, it is not being able to equally accommodate the experience of all. Still, it's inclined towards accommodating Western experiences. Then again, even a deviation from traditional approaches cannot globalize the discipline. কেন globalize করতে পারছে না বা পারবে না? Scholars such as Tarak Barkawi, Mark Leffy, Gayatri Spivak, those who are renowned for challenging traditional approaches of security. Gayatri Spivak Can the Subaltern Speaker কথা আমি বলছিলাম. Another very famous concept developed by her is epistemic violence. Violence through knowledge development. Biasness through knowledge development. Amitav Acharya's norm localization, and scholars like Barry Buzan who have attempted to expose the Eurocentric nature of the discipline and lay the groundwork for a non-Western security studies. আমি আসছি এটাতে, দেখো বলা হচ্ছে যে কনস্ট্রাকটিভিজম এর যতটুকু অ্যাপ্রোচ আছে টু চ্যালেঞ্জ ট্রেডিশনাল সিকিউরিটি, প্রথমত in context they are not being able to accommodate the equal experiences of all. Secondly, তারা যদিও বা ডেভিয়েট করার চেষ্টা করেছে from traditional security approach, still that could not globalize security studies. কেন গ্লোবালাইজ করতে পারেনি? So non-Western security studies has developed multiple challenging terms, challenging concepts, challenging theories. Challenging concepts like subalternism, as we have discussed, epistemic violence that I have just discussed, when knowledge has become partial. Knowledge has developed in a manner that makes a certain group privileged and others as underprivileged. Then it's knowledge-based or knowledge-derived violence. Norm localization, when global norms are not being translated or executed for the non-mainstream or common people. So global norm আছে, globally established norm আছে, but সেটাকে আমরা localize করতে পারছি না. So when this sort of deconstructing or challenging norms, challenging concepts are being analyzed within security studies, how it or how far it could develop an alternative approach to security. So some scholars have identified these alternative approaches as groundworks for non-Western security studies. But the author criticizes that rather than creation of a more global discipline, these contributions actually serve to further reinforce Eurocentric dichotomies. And the majority of the scholars attempting to create a global security studies within the Western framework while addressing or adding non-Western elements only. So try to understand. The author is claiming that there might be arising alternative approaches in security studies. There might be new theories like constructivism. There might be new concepts like norm localization, new concepts like epistemic violence, new concepts and theories like subalternism. Even though these concepts, ideas, and theories are trying to challenge the traditional approach of security studies, but it is not being able to develop security studies as a global discipline. There are a number of reasons are there behind this. First of all, these alternative approaches are not being able to be independent frameworks, rather than they are depending on the existing Western framework. The way Western framework, the way structural framework have analyzed the units in international politics, the way they have developed concepts, the way they have developed theories, new theories or alternative concepts are just trying to add new elements, but they are not proposing new frameworks. আমরা কি বুঝতে পারছি? We have already existing theories, Western developments like realism, liberalism. Now, when we are coming up with alternatives, keeping those framework in our minds, keeping those theories in our minds, and we are just trying to add our own experiences or our own elements within those existing frameworks, then will we be able to be independent from those frameworks? আমি কি বলেছি এটাকে বুঝতে পেরেছো? আচ্ছা, আজানটা শেষ হোক, আমি আবার বলছি। All right, so the point that I was discussing, the alternative approaches of security studies are not offering any new framework. Rather, within existing framework, they are just trying to add, and they are just trying to make the Western experience acknowledged by the non-Western experience acknowledged by the Western frameworks. For example, in the post-colonial moment in security studies, Barkawi and Lefi outline the Oriental gap within the discipline and conclude that Western scholars need to recognize the mutually constitutive character of world politics. Then again, it's the Western all scholars, then again, it's the Western framework that need to acknowledge the experience and the content of the non-West. Then again, it's about subaltern realism. Then again, it's about, or the analysis is starting from the already West-centric realist approach. We are not being able to independently develop our own framework or we are not being able to develop our own unit of analysis. Rather, we are trying to have the acknowledgement from the existing established frameworks. Instead, they ironically reinforce the Western centrism. আমরা যখন ওয়েস্টকে চ্যালেঞ্জ করার কথা বলে, ওয়েস্টার্ন ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক, ওয়েস্টার্ন থিওরিকে চ্যালেঞ্জ করার কথা বলে এমন এলিমেন্ট বা এমন এক্সপিরিয়েন্স আমাদের ডিসিপ্লিনে অ্যাড করতে চাচ্ছি যেটা আরো এক্সিস্টিং ফ্রেমওয়ার্কটাকে মোর ভ্যালিডেট করছে, তাহলে আমরা কি করছি? আমরা আনইনটেনশনালি ওই ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক, এক্সিস্টিং ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক বা ওয়েস্টার্ন যে প্রেসক্রিপশন সেটাকে আরো রিইনফোর্স করছি। সো এটাকে বলা হচ্ছে সাবলিমিনালি ইউরোসেন্ট্রিক। Unconsciously, we are more emphasizing or more inclining towards the West prescribed discipline or framework of security studies. So they are ironically reinforcing the Western centrism of the discipline by placing the West, despite being critical of it, at the center of their analysis. যখন আমরা unit of analysis, method of analysis, we are not changing those, we are just adding our experience. So what are we doing? We are making them subliminally Eurocentric, and yet fail to realize that they too are reinforcing the centrality of these great Western wars. So ultimately, tahole ki hocche? The authors are trying to argue that authors like Peter Bilgin also criticizes Buzan and Hansen that instead of merely acknowledging this absence as blind spots, an examination of how and why needs to be addressed, which is absent in existing alternative frameworks. So existing alternative framework ki korche? The authors are criticizing that the creation of a more global discipline, those contributions actually serve to further reinforce the Eurocentric dichotomies. Eurocentrism ke they are more reinforcing. So the majority of scholars are attempting to create a global security studies within the Western framework while adding non-Western elements only. আমরা যখন existing theoretical ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক বা এক্সিস্টিং কনসেপচুয়াল ফ্রেমওয়ার্কের মধ্যে আমার এক্সপিরিয়েন্সকে শুধুমাত্র অ্যাড করতে চাচ্ছি, অথবা এক্সিস্টিং ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক থেকে আমি অ্যাকনলেজমেন্ট চাচ্ছি, সেক্ষেত্রে আমি কি করছি? আই এম রিএনফোর্সিং দ্য সিগনিফিকেন্স অফ দি existing frameworks. So according to the authors, the future search for non-Western theory is becoming subliminally Eurocentric. So Acharya and Buzan similarly adhered to this subliminal Eurocentrism, according to the authors. Within their 2007 book, Non-Western International Relations Theory, which has based on a search for non-Western theory that looks like Western IR. So authors like Barry Buzan or Amitav Acharya, when they have composed books like Non-Western International Relations Theory, তখন non-Western international theory কে খুঁজতে গিয়েও তারা existing international theory কে মডেল হিসেবে সামনে রেখেছেন। এটাকেই বলা হচ্ছে যে non-Western theories which looks like Western IR. So for example, the authors are preoccupied with finding Eastern contribution to the theory that will fit broadly within our understanding of existing IR frameworks. So they have tried to explain realism, liberalism, constructivism, and they have tried to search and develop Eastern contribution in realism, Eastern contribution in liberalism, Eastern contribution in constructivism. rather than searching something independent or rather than emancipating from those traditional approaches. আমরা কি বুঝতে পারছি আমি কি বলেছি?
ম্যাম এটা কি কলোনিয়ালিটি অফ নলেজের সাথে কাইন্ডা কানেক্ট করে না?
কিসের সাথে?
কলোনিয়ালিটি অফ নলেজ কুইন যে
Yes,
থিওরিটা ওইটার সাথে।
of course. এই জন্যই তো বললাম এপিস্টেমিক ভায়োলেন্সের কথা। So starting from knowledge to our experience, our content, our framework, কি হচ্ছে যে ওয়েস্ট সেন্ট্রিক ইনক্লাইন্ড হচ্ছে, এবং দ্যাট টু ইজ সাবলিমিনালি। আমি বলছি আই এম ট্রাইং টু ডেভেলপ নন ওয়েস্টার্ন ইন্টারন্যাশনাল রিলেশনস থিওরি, বাট দেন আগেন আই এম ফলিং ব্যাক to existing mainstream international relations or security frameworks. So Buzan and Acharya are therefore essentially dismissing the relevance of these Eastern models of thinking due to their absence or inapplicability to conventional IR. So এই জন্যই বলা হচ্ছে যে এই যে it's really difficult to search for non-Western theory, and in future search of non-Western theory তে subliminal Eurocentrism যতদিন থাকছে ততদিন পর্যন্ত it's really tough to develop non-Western theories of security, and it's tough to emerge security studies, make security studies emerge as a global discipline. So in addition to this, the authors like ওই অমিতাভ আচার্য এবং ব্যারি বুজানের কথা বলছে, believe that in order to judge the significance of the work of Asian scholars, we should look for contribution that may be regarded as pre-theories. Not only তারা এটা বলছে যে এক্সিস্টিং ইন্টারন্যাশনাল থিওরিজ এ নন ওয়েস্টার্ন কন্ট্রিবিউশনটা কি, নট অনলি দে হ্যাভ সেড দ্যাট, also they have tried to look for contributions from non-Western scholars that may be regarded as pre-theories. So contributions, theoretical contributions from scholars from the non-West, তাদের জাজমেন্ট হচ্ছে এরকম যে দে মাইট বি ইনিশিয়ালি রিগার্ডেড অ্যাজ প্রি থিওরিজ, যেটাকে আমরা মে নট হ্যাভ দ্য ফুল casual or predictive attributes associated with American style international theories. হ্যাঁ, প্রি থিওরিজ বলতে কি বোঝাচ্ছে যে পুরোপুরি থিওরিটিক্যাল এক্সপ্লেনেশন হিসেবে ডেভেলপ করে নাই। সো তাদের যে আইডিয়াটা যে নন ওয়েস্টার্ন স্কলারলি এঙ্গেজমেন্ট, থিওরিটিক্যাল এঙ্গেজমেন্টকে আমরা প্রি থিওরি থেকেও স্টার্ট করতে পারি, দ্যাট হ্যাজ অলসো বিন ক্রিটিসাইজড বাই দ্য অথর, দ্যাট ইটস দ্য প্রি ডেভেলপড জাজমেন্ট, যে নন ওয়েস্টার্ন যে নলেজ ডেভেলপমেন্ট সেটা হয়তো ইনিশিয়ালি থিওরি হিসেবে ডেভেলপ করতে পারবে না, যেটাকে আমাদের প্রি থিওরি হিসেবে রিগার্ড করতে হতে পারে, মে বি রিগার্ডেড অ্যাজ প্রি থিওরিজ, which may not have the full casual or predictive attributes associated with American style IR. So this explicates how the authors are assessing and judging the values of non-Western approaches against Western criteria, potentially subliminally, যেটা বলছে যে ওই যে unconscious ভাবে, তারা conscious না, they are trying to develop alternative approaches, but while developing alternative approaches, they have assumed and analyzed non-Western context in such a manner যে তারা কি করছে, ইউরোসেন্ট্রিজমকেই তারা রিইনফোর্স করে ফেলছে, প্লেসিং দ্য ওয়েস্ট অ্যাট দ্য সেন্টার অফ অ্যানালিসিস। তারা ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক একই রাখছে, তারা নন ওয়েস্টার্ন কন্ট্রিবিউশনকে টু সাম এক্সটেন্ট ডিমিন করছে যে প্রি থিওরি হিসেবে ডেভেলপ করানো যেতে পারে। সো ইট ইজ দেয়ারফর কোয়েশ্চেনেবল হাউ দিস অ্যাপ্রোচ উইল ক্রিয়েট আ ট্রুলি গ্লোবাল ডিসিপ্লিন। ঠিক আছে, সো সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজকে যখন আমরা গ্লোবাল ডিসিপ্লিন হিসেবে এস্টাবলিশ করাতে চাচ্ছি, তখন সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজ ইজ বাই নো মিনস গ্লোবাল ইন নেচার, অ্যাকর্ডিং টু দ্য অথর। To explain and analyze European imperialism and Western interactions with the international system, as Edward Said, for example, acknowledge how the intellectuals always enters already existing structure of power and speaks with the framework and history of already articulated values and ideas. ঠিক একইভাবে author এই এক্সিস্টিং যে অ্যাপ্রোচেস গুলো আছে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল সিকিউরিটিকে গ্লোবাল করার জন্য, নন ওয়েস্টার্ন থিওরি ডেভেলপ করার জন্য, সেই ইন্টেলেকচুয়াল ডেভেলপমেন্টকে বলেছে ইট ইজ অলরেডি addressing the structure of power and speaks within the framework and history of already articulated values and ideas. So security studies therefore entered into a discipline that favored Western structures of power and spoke within the framework and history of Western values and ideas. So structure, value, idea, power, সবকিছুই till now is being West-centric. And in order to tackle the marginalization of peripheral international security perspectives, we must therefore look beyond the limited boundaries of Western IR. So আমরা যখন সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজ কে ইমানসিপেট করতে চাবো, তখন আমাদেরকে কি করতে হবে, ওই যে ফিক্সড বাউন্ডারিজ বা ফিক্সড ফ্রেমওয়ার্কস গুলো আছে, we have to surpass those, and only then we will uncover truly indigenous cultures and perspectives, and as a result this will lay the groundwork for the creation of a peripheral approach to international security, which can be theorizing that does not blindly conform to pre-existing or preset Western criteria. So আমাদের preset Western criteria ke when we can ignore and we can independently develop unit of analysis, তখন শুধুমাত্র security studies কে আমরা global security studies হিসেবে establish করার approach নিতে পারবো। হ্যাঁ, অথর বলছে যে contrast to Acharya, once these peripheral perspectives are realized, such as indigenous security issues, subalternism, post-colonial approaches, they should work alongside, not integrated within orthodox IR theories. So, Western unit of analysis এর সাথে non-Western unit of analysis can substantially differ. একদম ডিফারেন্ট ইউনিট অফ অ্যানালিসিস হতে পারে, ডিফারেন্ট ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক হতে পারে, নট নেসেসারিলি এক্সিস্টিং অ্যানালিসিস বা ফ্রেমওয়ার্কে আমাকে ফিট ইন করাতে হবে। দে ক্যান ওয়ার্ক সাইড বাই সাইড, দে নিড নট টু বি integrated. Only then these non-Western approaches could have subjective significance. So in conclusion, this is not to say that a global theory of security isn't possible. It is just not possible within the Western discipline of security studies itself. So we have to think surpassing the existing formats, existing frameworks. So the academic discipline of security studies was created and therefore remains not for the globe, but by and for the West. And in order to uncover a truly global security perspectives, scholars should instead detach themselves from the boundaries of Western academic discipline, যেটা বললাম যে existing framework থেকে বের হতে হবে, and security studies, and look to the international realm more broadly for analysis of security that may not necessarily adhere to the mainstream Western IR, but a more inclusive and comprehensive understanding of global security dynamics. হ্যাঁ, এখানে অনেক literary articulation আছে, but I think you have understood the gist of the argument. যে there is an established lacuna or gap, and to address the gap যে অ্যাপ্রোচ গুলো না হচ্ছে, এই অ্যাপ্রোচ গুলো আসলে সাবলিমিনালি, দ্যাট মিনস সাবকনশিয়াস ওয়েতে এগুলো ওয়েস্ট সেন্ট্রিজমকে রিইনফোর্স করছে। সো সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজ এর আর গ্লোবাল হওয়া হচ্ছে না, ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্ট অ্যাপ্রোচ আসছে না, ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্ট এক্সপিরিয়েন্সকে হাইলাইটেড করা হচ্ছে না। সো সিকিউরিটি স্টাডিজ এর when we will go through the history, the theories, the critical theories, human security, এই সব কিছু পড়ার সময়ই তোমাদের এই কোয়েশ্চেন গুলো, এই আর্গুমেন্ট গুলো, you have to keep this in your mind. হ্যাঁ, that's why before discussing the history or the theories of security studies, I thought that these questions or this argument needs to be there in your mind. যার কারণে আজকে এটা আলোচনা করলাম। হয়তো নেক্সট ক্লাস থেকে আমরা সিকিউরিটির থিওরি বা সিকিউরিটির যে হিস্ট্রি, এই টপিকগুলো আমরা যাতে আলোচনা করতে পারি। ঠিক আছে, এখন বলো তোমাদের এন্ড থেকে কোনো কোয়ারিজ বা ডাউটস আছে কিনা। ওকে, যদি ডাউটস না থাকে আমি তোমাদের অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স দিয়ে নিচ্ছি। জাস্ট হোল্ড অন ফর 2 minutes.
ম্যাম, একটা কথা বলতে পারি?
বলো।
ম্যাম, আমাদেরকে যে রিডিং ম্যাটেরিয়াল সাজেস্ট করছেন, ওখানে আপনি যে ইন্ট্রোডাকশন টু ইন্টেলিজেন্স স্টাডিজ, জেনসেন, ম্যাক আলব্রিথ আর গ্রেভস এর যে বইটার চ্যাপ্টার 1 এর কথা বলছেন, ম্যাম ওই ম্যাটেরিয়ালটা মানে ক্লাসরুমে পাচ্ছি না।
ঠিক আছে, আই উইল চেক দ্যাট। আমাকে আরো আরো কয়েকজন বলেছেন ক্লাসের শুরুতে, আই উইল চেক দ্যাট।
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ ম্যাম।
আনিকা তাবাসসুম, সাদিয়া চৌধুরী,
Present, Miss.
দেওয়ান তাসনিম,
Present, ma'am.
রোল নাম্বার 1, 5,
Present, ma'am.
9, 11,
Present, ma'am.
15,
Present, ma'am.
17,
Present, ma'am.
19,
Present, ma'am.
25,
Present, ma'am.
29,
Present, ma'am.
31,
Present, ma'am.
33,
Present, ma'am.
35,
Present, ma'am.
37,
Present, ma'am.
39, 43,
Present, ma'am.
45,
Present, ma'am.
49, 53,
Present, ma'am.
55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 63,
ম্যাম চ্যাট বক্সে লিখেছেন।
67,
Present, ma'am.
71,
Present, ma'am.
73,
Present, ma'am.
79, 81,
Yes, ma'am.
85,
Present, ma'am.
87,
Present, ma'am.
89,
Present, ma'am.
91,
Present, ma'am.
95,
Yes, ma'am.
99, 103,
Yes, ma'am.
107,
Present, ma'am.
109,
Present, ma'am.
111,
Present, ma'am.
113,
Present, ma'am.
115,
Present, ma'am.
119,
Present, ma'am.
123,
Present, ma'am.
125,
Present, ma'am.
129,
Present, ma'am.
133,
Present, ma'am.
135.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. Rule 13 present. Net issue
এখন
ছিল।
ইন্টারাপ্ট করো না, শেষ করি তারপরে 135,
Present, ma'am.
Present, ma'am.
hun- hun-
And 39.
39 তো বলি নাই, 35
Sorry,
বলেছিলাম।
sorry, ma'am.
Ma'am, 35 present.
ওকে, 143, Fayaz.
Present, ma'am.
Okay, now
Present,
tell
ma'am.
me who are left.
Ma'am,
49,
001. Present, ma'am.
একজন একজন করে বলো।
Miss 001.
01.
Ma'am, 13 present.
Okay, 1, then 13, then
49, ma'am.
49. Who else?
Yes.
CR, please check the chat box. Section এর আর কেউ আছে? Norin Jahan, Nusrat Jahan,
Yes, ma'am.
Said Ishrat Naim, roll number 2,
Present, ma'am.
4,
Present, ma'am.
8,
Present, ma'am.
10,
Present, ma'am.
18,
Present, ma'am.
20,
Present, ma'am.
24,
Present, ma'am.
30,
Present, ma'am.
32,
Present, ma'am.
34,
Present, ma'am.
36,
Yes, ma'am.
38,
Present, ma'am.
48, 50,
Yes, ma'am. 48, ma'am. Present.
okay, 50,
Present, ma'am.
54,
Present, ma'am.
62,
Yes, ma'am.
64,
Present, ma'am.
80, 82,
Present, ma'am. Present, ma'am.
84,
Present, ma'am.
88,
ম্যাম চ্যাট বক্সে লিখেছে।
96,
Present, miss.
98,
Yes, ma'am.
100,
Present, ma'am.
106, 106, 110,
Yes, ma'am.
চ্যাট বক্সে লিখেছে ম্যাম।
106.
okay, 110,
প্রেজেন্ট ম্যাম।
112, 114,
Present, ma'am.
Ma'am, 112. Sorry, ma'am.
116,
Yes, ma'am.
118,
প্রেজেন্ট ম্যাম।
120,
Present, miss.
124,
Yes, ma'am.
126,
Present, ma'am.
128,
প্রেজেন্ট ম্যাম।
130,
Present, miss.
132,
Yes, ma'am.
134, 136,
Present, Miss.
140,
Present, ma'am.
142.
Present, ma'am.
Anyone
ম্যাম
left?
ম্যাম
বলো।
ম্যাম আমি রাধি, আমি শুরু থেকে ক্লাসে ছিলাম, বাট অ্যাটেন্ডেন্সের সময় আমার বেবির কারণে আমি ঠিক টাইমে মাইকটা ওপেন করতে পারিনি। আমি
এই
এই
সেকশন
সেকশনে।
শেষ হোক, তারপরে বলো। সেকশন
আচ্ছা
বি, এনিওয়ান লেফট?
Ma'am, 80 present, ma'am.
80. Okay. Anyone else? Section B, anyone else?
ইয়েস ম্যাম 9।
All right.
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ ম্যাম। আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
Walaikum assalam. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next class.
ম্যাম
বলো।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম ম্যাম, আমার ইলেকট্রিসিটি চলে গিয়েছিল ম্যাম। আমি বি সেকশনের।
কি পড়িয়েছে আজকে বলো তো? কি পড়িয়েছি ফারহান? এত সময় লাগছে বলতে? তুমি কি আসলে ক্লাসে ছিলা নাকি এখন আসছো? অ্যাটেন্ডেন্সের সময় আসলে তো আমি অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স দিব না। একটা লাইন বলতে পারছো না? আর ইউ দেয়ার? 134